Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Safa's Unscripted. We have come back with another banger for you. We did our forwards top 10 where we got a bunch of influencers and friends to send us lists. And now we're doing the backline. So that's going to be great. Unfortunately, we don't have Brett with us at the moment. He is running late from his rugby training. And it's just the two of us for now. Brett might jump in if he gets here in time. If not, no worries. We'll carry this episode. Casual guys, how are you doing? You ready for this?
Good. At least I know, like, the two of us are committed. Some of us have other priorities, but this is our priority. Okay, we have to be here for the people, and that's what we will do. Let the redhead come on his own time then. But yeah, overall doing good. Jokes aside, very excited for this one. We love a bit of fun on this channel because we make the serious videos when it comes to the previews and the reviews and stuff. So it's always a nice bit of fun, and this is interactive as always. Like we put it on our social medias, ask the people to send in their lists. How many lists did we get? I think we had about 25 lists.
This time we had 20 lists for the forwards. I think we had 12 for the backline. We have 20 lists, which is great. So the most points a player could get was 200. So I'll go through the scoring system again if some haven't seen the forwards video. But basically, guys, we basically asked 20 different people. Obviously, myself, Casual Bias, and Brett were three of them. And then we also asked international influencers from New Zealand.
Otherwise, people would say it's too biased, right? So we had to get the international people in.
Yeah, so we've got New Zealanders, we've got English, we've got an Irishman, we've got Italian, and a Scotsman. So we've got a few internationals in there, just so that you guys know that we aren't trying to make this Safa, ruled. We're trying to make this as fair as possible.
Yeah, but, and if you guys didn't watch the previous video, please remember to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of these fun videos. And you can just go back and watch our previous video. I think it was 3 episodes ago that we did it. A little Friday special. We're doing a Friday special this weekend as well, and we'll try and do a fun one every weekend, if we can't every second weekend, for you guys. Take it away, Brevan.
Yeah, so obviously I've done all the tallying of the points. Had obviously 20 lists submitted to me, and like I said, first place gets 10 points, second place gets 9 points, and so on until 10th place gets 1 point. So that's how the scoring works. Just to remind you guys that if players end up on the same points, the player that ends up ranked higher is the person that got nominated the highest on any given person's list. And if still it's at a tie, then it's whoever got mentioned more. So listen, guys, we got 55 mentions out of 20 lists. 55. Now, I genuinely thought we would have less than the forwards, but we actually ended up having more, which is crazy to think, because this should be, if you just think straight up, dominated by New Zealand players. But there are a lot of other nations that have been mentioned, or players from different nations. So we aren't going to go through all 55 because that's going to take forever. We're going to do top 20, well, from 20 to 11, where we're just going to quickly give them an honorable mention, and then we'll dive in depth with 10 to 1. So
yeah. And I just want to clarify something, right? Because we had this on the previous time we did it, and we know we're wasting your time, and we want to get into the list. But someone left a comment to say, "How could you not know who this player was?" and whatever. Okay, I'm 23. Brevan is 24. Okay, people, we don't know people that played in 1950. That is 50 years before our birth. So if we didn't bring them in, so be it. Okay, we have to judge it on what we've seen, and I'm not putting them in on a YouTube compilation. Okay,
literally,
on just nostalgia.
People need to understand that we do know who these people are, but we never got to watch them, so we can't make a fair judgment on these players. So it's better to just leave them out. And obviously, there's all ages that have been included in these lists. I mean, some of Casual's family was involved. Some of my friends are a bit older as well. So we've got people who are going to bring in, obviously the more earlier generation as well. But let's get straight into it. In 20th place, Sonny Bill Williams came in with 12 points. I don't know if he should be that high.
Me neither. There's no way he's in the top 10 because I think
or top 20. Yeah.
Yeah, but like in someone's top 10 list
overall. Yeah.
Like, because if you think about it, there's like 6 players that has to be in there. About 6 players that has to be in there. So you have 4 vacancies that you can almost like differ from each other. Obviously, the order will always change, and he does not get in there. I can think of just pure centers. Does he get in the top 10 centers? Maybe wow. I'm stuck here on my own. Where's Brevan?
No, there I am. After we had a little bit of a glitch there for a second.
Yeah. So if you were to do a top 10 centers, I could agree, maybe, but not in a top 10 all time, my opinion.
Yeah, look, I think he was a good player. Obviously, he was known for the offloads and stuff, and a fantastic player. But I just don't think he did enough to get into a top 10. Even top 20. Or when I tallied up, he got 12 points and 20th place. I still think that's a bit high.
But he was a brilliant player. Let's be honest, he was a brilliant player, but not top 10 worthy, in my opinion. Let's go.
So yeah, 19. This one, I think it's fair to have him in the top 20. I think it's all right. But Johnny Sexton came in at 19th with 13 points. Look, he would never come close to my top 10 purely because I just think he was a very good system player. I think if
fully agree.
In an All Blacks team or a Springboks team, he might not have been as useful. Obviously, very good in that Irish system. And look, he did a lot in the Six Nations. He won a lot for Leinster as well. But if we look at what really kind of matters sometimes when it comes to like World Cups, he didn't really make his mark. And I just could never put him in my top 10. I don't know about you.
So the thing for me was, right, I think Johnny Sexton deserves respect on his name. Obviously, he's one of the greatest Irish players, top point scorer ever in the Six Nations, okay? So let's not take anything away because we're not doing this video to slander people.
Yeah.
But as an individual player, I can't think of a lot of moments where it's like, oh, wow, only Johnny Sexton could have done that. I can think of a million teams that have played the game that could have done what Johnny Sexton has done because the Irish system is so good. So it's not taking away from Johnny Sexton himself, but if you put in Richie Muwanga in Johnny Sexton's position, he would have done the exact same because Johnny Sexton doesn't have that individual accomplishments except for the top point scorer ever. But obviously that's also with the kicks, or mostly because of the kicks. I just don't think as an individual player, he didn't have the pace necessarily. He was a good tackler and he was a good captain, but the system just fit him perfectly. But I think they could have built that system around most other teams as well, and they could have done a good job. And that kind of a point is being proved by just seeing how good Jack Crowley is doing in the Six Nations currently, just coming in and literally filling that hole like Johnny Sexton isn't even missed. Not saying he's not missed, but that's just kind of what puts him outside of the top 10, in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, obviously, like I said, I'll take nothing away from what he did. I mean, he obviously he was, like I said, he was a great system player. And some people aren't able to be system players. Like, some people have to express themselves in different ways, and that's why he was so good for Ireland, because they had a system and he knew exactly how to play it. So it's a fair play. 18th place. Israel Folau, also 13
wow.
points. Yeah. 18th, 13 points.
Way too low. Way too low. I had him high up in my top 10.
I just don't think he did enough. Great player. I just don't
we spoke about this, Brevan, on one of the more recent episodes, right? And I remember I said Israel Dag was better. Okay, but that was also just to banter Brett a bit. Okay, but if you think about who changed the game almost, it's load shedding. Israel Folau was absolutely scintillating. My goodness, it's bothering me now. Absolutely scintillating. Like, I can't think of many many players that could have done what Israel Folau did. If you talk about some of the best athletes to play the game, he has to be up there with in the likes of the top 3. He was absolutely brilliant. Now, of course, people will have their personal opinions on whether what he did in terms of religion was right or wrong. Okay, we're not here to talk about that. As a rugby player, he was absolutely brilliant, and he was by a country mile the best 15 to play in that era. Now, of course, people will talk about Christian Cullen. Fair enough. Before my time, my dad loves Christian Cullen, his favorite player in the world. But Israel Folau should be up there in the top 10 easily, in my point, just because he kind of revolutionized the way that the 15 plays. My opinion.
Yeah, well, look, obviously a fantastic player, one of the best in that position. I completely agree. It's just a shame that his career kind of went the way it did, and the disagreements between the union and himself. Obviously, we won't get into the politics of it all because that's pointless. But look, obviously a great player. It's just, like I said, it's a shame the way his career panned out, because I feel like if he had played longer at that level, he definitely would be in there for sure. So that's where I'm coming from. But 17,
understandable, yeah.
Yeah. So 17, Dani Gerber. Obviously, look, I've heard a lot about this guy. He got 15 points. He obviously played for the Springboks. Many consider him one of probably the greatest Springbok of all time. I've heard a lot of people call him the greatest Springbok of all time. Obviously, it's before our time. But look, he got 15 points and he's up there in 17. So I can't comment too much. But
yeah, me neither. I just know that's a bunch of my family that put him in there because they are Dani Gerber Mal. So, yeah, look, I don't have anything to add to it. I've never seen the guy play. Respect to him for being there. But yeah, we'll stick to making comments about our generation.
Yeah. So look, like I said, I've heard a lot about the guy, which obviously means he was something special in that era. So that's great to hear. 16th place, Tana Umaga, also with 15 points. Look, he was just such a cool guy. I mean, he was
the Ma Nonu before Ma Nonu.
Literally, and I got the glimpse of him towards the end of his career, and look, he was also a phenomenal player. So look, fair play. A lot of like you said, he was the Nonu before Nonu, and obviously very similar players. But anything to add from your side on that?
Yeah, I think most people probably had the debate whether they should put in Nonu or Umaga. Like, both deserve to be up high, but it was like you don't want to put two of the same player in. So, and to be fair, Nonu did it for longer. Nonu still plays. I think he plays in America. He might have retired now. So that's probably why most people also went for Nonu. But you can't disagree with people that put in Umaga, because it's just like you don't want to use two spots for almost the exact same player. So, but yeah, deserves to be up there. Brilliant player, probably one of the best centers this world will ever see.
Just before we carry on, if you hear a noise in the background, that is my inverter charging because our power just came back on. So apologies for that. But in 15th place, Farid Dupriya, also with 15 points. I had Farid Dupriya in my top 10. And look, I'm happy with him at 15th. I'm not too mad at it. I think he should be in the top 20 at least. But Farid Dupriya was just a phenomenal player. I mean, so many clutch moments from him in the Springboks, in World Cups as well. And look, obviously, as a Bulls fan, I have a lot of love for him because he played for the Bulls, a legend for the Bulls as well. And just so good at what he did. I mean, so calm and he never stressed. And just one of those players that always went under the radar, but just always did his job to perfection. So
yeah, you hardly watched the game and thought Farid Dupriya didn't pitch up for this game or he had a bad game or anything. I mean, he came in clutch against Wales in the World Cup. If you remember that Dwayne Vermeulen try as well, he just had a bunch of those moments that just like slipped under the radar. Very sneaky, not the fastest player in the world, not necessarily the smoothest player in the world, just consistently brilliant when it came to doing his job. So he deserves to be there. People talking about him being one of the best scrum halves to ever live in the debate with Aaron Smith, Joos van der Westhuizen, and obviously people some people will really put in recency bias and throw in Antoine Dupont. But yeah, he has to be in the conversation for the best nines to ever do it, and that automatically should get him around about top 10, top 20 vibes.
Yeah, no, 100%. Then next up, 14th place. I thought that he would be a bit higher in the sense that so many people have talked, obviously not our era again, but so many people talked about this guy as being the guy, a phenomenal wing. David Campese also with 15 points. Look, I can't really comment on it because I didn't really see him that much. But look, from what I've seen on compilations on YouTube and stuff, he was a great player. But yeah, I mean, I expected him to be higher because I've seen so many people before we even thought of doing these lists throw him in the top 10. And when I saw he only got 15 points, because you'll see how many points the top 10 has. It's a massive jump. So interesting to see him there at 14.
Yeah. It comes down to what I mentioned previously with the top 6 almost being fixed, and then let's say for the likes of, we all know Dan Carter is going to be up there, and he's going to be probably 1 or 2 on most lists, right? So that is a big jump in points every single time. So 2 people can put in Dan Carter at 1, and 3 people could put in Campese at 5, and that only gets him 50 points. And Dan Carter only mentioned twice, but it's 1. He gets 20 points from that. So that's how the jump or the golfing points comes through. But obviously, I won't comment on David Campese either. I didn't see him a lot. Obviously, that comes from the older generation as well. So our older families that put him in. Because I'm not putting, as we said, we're not nostalgia merchants. We're not putting in people that we didn't see.
Yeah, 100%. 13th place. Again, I can't comment. Tim Horan came in with 16 points. And look, someone literally had him, I think, at first. Someone had him at first.
Oh, my word.
Like, wow. That's
like, obviously the name is massive, right? So we've all heard of Tim Horan, but the thing is, like, I'm not one of those rugby fans, right, that watches games of the 1980s and 1990s. Like, there's enough rugby on every single weekend. I'm not going back to watch more rugby of that time, because if you watch that rugby, it's a completely different game. So, yeah, but fair play to him. Obviously, also the older generation. Some of the older generation that watches our channel would say, wow, what a shot. He should have been even higher. Fair enough. That's just what you get when you when you do the rankings with such a big age gap between all the people that send in their lists. Because obviously, I'm not going to put him in. So that's kind of the reason he's dropped out of the top 10. But if you had the generation of, let's say, 30 to 40-year-olds, they would have all put him in.
Yeah. So this is when we get a bit more to names that we obviously will definitely know and we can discuss more in depth. So we get into our top 12 now. In 12th place with 20 points, Antoine Dupont. He doesn't make top 10 and he finishes 12th, which I'm okay with. I'm okay with that, because I don't think Dupont has done enough. Look, fantastic player, don't get me wrong. Best 9 in the world at the moment. Phenomenal player. He carries that French team, and we're seeing that, and that's in the Six Nations. But I just think he needs to win a Grand Slam, like again and again and again, and possibly even a World Cup, to really just solidify that top 10 position. And look, by the end of his career, I can see him being there if he continues the way he does. So yeah, I don't know what you think, but I can see him there towards the end of his career.
Yeah, the thing with Dupont, right, in the scrum off position, and it's always like this for the scrum off position, is you fighting against longevity, because the scrum off position is one of those where people can play until they're 65, right? So I think 12 is a bit too high in my opinion, but then also, like, I kind of have to consider it's just on pure individual player. Like, you can't take the team that he played for, right? Because that's why we spoke about Sexton saying it's too high, because most of his accomplishments were team accomplishments, where Dupont maybe doesn't have that much accomplishments, but he's a brilliant individual player. Like, if you think of individual magic, he's got a ton of those. If you watch a compilation, you could watch hours of videos of what Dupont has done before in such a short amount of time. So I kind of want to say it's not fair to have him up that high, because I don't think you can put him up above Fourie de Pre, but I can't think of him much lower than that if you just talk about the skills that he has as a player. So I'll put respect on his name and say 12th is fair enough. I didn't put him in my list. But yeah,
No, neither did I. Neither did I,
brilliant.
yeah. So would you say that he possibly makes it towards the end of his career?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. If he keeps on playing the way that he does now and he doesn't like have a insane fall off all of a sudden, yeah. Depends how France also goes, obviously. Like, I'm not putting in a guy there, even though he's brilliant, if France just like falls off the rails for the next few years, because then it just feels like he should have, as a top 10 player, should have done a better job in lifting his team up to higher standards. But I think France will get it right sooner or later again, and then he won't even be in the discussion. He will be up there in the discussion.
Okay. This is when it gets in. So 11th and 10th were tied on 21 points together. But the person that finished 10th got, I think, a second place finish, and 11th got a third place finish on one of the lists. So in 11th place, what a player. I mean, Rugby 08 nostalgia. Jason Robinson. There's not much more to say. I thought
he was on my fringes. On the fringes of getting into my list. Absolutely brilliant player. Rugby 08, it's the only time I would ever support England, and that's when I used to play on the PlayStation with the England guys and just give Jason Robinson the ball and just go crazy. Absolutely brilliant. Obviously that one celebration in the intro of the game, also nostalgia, where he just like eats the ball and goes crazy. And Brett said it in one of the videos earlier, that he was kind of one of those fullbacks that was so ahead of his time. He was appreciated, but I think in today's game, he would have been even better. That's what Brett said. And I can't necessarily disagree or agree with it, but respect to him for being up there because he was ahead of his time.
Yeah, so like obviously I respect the guy. He was a phenomenal player, and he did a fantastic job for England for a very long time. But yeah, let's get into the spicy part now, guys, or my fellow casual bias, just the two of us for now. In 10th place, also at 21 points, but like I said, he finished one higher than Jason Robinson. And I'm happy he's here purely because I just think he was also underappreciated in a sense. Obviously, before our time again, but because he's South African, we know a lot about him. But Joos van der Westhuizen comes in at 10th place. I think he was the smallest guy on the field, and he still managed to say to Jonah Lomi, listen, mate, I'm still going to tackle you. You can't
Everyone remembers that.
I mean, the guy just had no fear. And look, Joos van der Westhuizen, a legend in South African rugby. And obviously, I mean, rest in peace to him. But look, we really appreciate the guy in South Africa in general. And yeah, I'm happy he's in 10th place. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I fully agree. He wasn't in my list. Same as we've already said. He was before our time. Now, I know how absolutely brilliant he was. Literally a South African hero for all of us. Most people would say he inspired Fourie de Pre, and the likes of that. I would have liked to have seen Fourie de Pre up a bit closer now, because a lot of people would also say Fourie de Pre was a bit better than Joos van der Westhuizen. But definitely deserving to be up there. Insane player. It might be mostly South Africans that put him up really high in the list because we rate him very highly out here in South Africa. You don't rate him as the best 9 to ever play the game. They rate him as one of the best players to ever play the game. Obviously part of the team that kind of changed the shape of our nation when we won the World Cup in 95. So yeah, he's just a total icon of South Africa, and good to him for getting into that top 10.
Yeah. So this next one, I genuinely thought he would be higher. He was number 1 on my list because I just think in his prime, no one comes close. Not even Dan Carter. And I'm going to be 100% real. In 9th place with 30 points, Beauden Barrett. Look, I'll go
10 of those 30 points are you.
Yeah. Well, yeah, 10 of those points are me. I just think that Beauden Barrett in his prime was something that you'll never ever see again, because I just think the downfall and the reason why no one rates him as highly now is because they decided that Beauden Barrett was a 15, and I've never understood it. I've always thought 10 should be Beauden Barrett, even over Richie Mwanga, and I think D-Mac should have been the 15, but that's just coming from me. But Beauden Barrett's prime, I mean, back-to-back World Player of the Years, just so good. There was a time where he was literally unplayable, where the opposition had no answer for this guy. And yeah, I mean, that's just why I put him up there, because back-to-back Player of the Years, World Player of the Years, and still just unplayable at times.
And it was easily him being World Player of the Year. It wasn't even a competition. Like, you just knew he had it in the bag. I agree, but also disagree with you to some extent on it. I think in his prime, he was absolutely scintillating. I do think Dan Carter comes close, by the way. I do not agree with Brevin on that one. The thing is, people are talking about the drop-off, and I don't agree with people saying it's a drop-off, because in my opinion, he's only had like one average season that he didn't stand out, and that was last season. Before that, he was still absolutely brilliant, because we were talking about the two best 10s in the world being Beauden Barrett, Richie Mwanga. And Beauden Barrett started almost every single game at 10, having Richie Mwanga come from the bench. If you have the second best 10 in world rugby, and he has to play from the bench, that has to tell you how good the guy in the first position is. And the other point that I disagree with you on is I feel he maybe dropped off a bit in that 10 position, and Mwanga deserved to get that 10 position, especially if you looked at how he played at the Crusaders. But that just made him, in my opinion, the second best 15 in the world. I thought he was absolutely scintillating in the World Cup in that number 15 jersey. And I think that's what makes him an even better player. To think that he went from that 10 position, the best in the world for years and years and years, to go into 15 and being one of the best 15s in the world as well, where you can't say it. Playing 10 and 15 is the same thing. It's totally different games. And he's made both work absolutely brilliantly. And now he's come out, obviously, Richie Mwanga not being able to play for the All Blacks since he's went and played abroad now. Beauden said, listen, he wants that 10 jersey back again. He's going to fight for that 10 jersey back. And I think that is a scary thought, because if Beauden Barrett's on it that day, he is unplayable. And he deserves to be up a lot higher on this list. I've got him up high as well. People will say it's recency, but if you think about that run, when Dan Carter finished, and people were like, okay, we'll definitely find another 10, because we've always had a good 10. They didn't think they might find someone on the potential that Dan Carter had. He absolutely was. He was absolutely brilliant. That 2015 World Cup, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I don't think I've ever seen someone play as good, because that was the likes when Julian Savia was ripping everyone to shreds, and yet everyone was just talking about Beauden Barrett, and he still walked Player of the Year against Julian Savia.
Yeah. No. Look, I think, just like I said, it was purely because of his back-to-back World Player of the Years, and then obviously being so unplayable. Look, this is no disrespect to Dan Carter. Dan Carter is obviously a legend and obviously a fantastic player, but Beauden Barrett just was more pleasing to the eye than Dan Carter to me, and obviously that's just an opinion. It's not a fact. So yeah, that's just me. But in 8th place, Christian Cullen with 35 points. Look, I mean, a lot of people had him in. No one had him like super high, but
I think my dad had him very high.
Oh yeah, well there, but a lot of people had him just like 6th or 5th, and that got him like his points, and they kept building up, and a lot of mentions came of him. So look, fair play. I can't say that I watched a massive amount of him, but look, from what I've seen, a phenomenal player.
Yeah, the way that I spoke about Israel Folau, kind of redefining how the 15 plays, Christian Cullen did that before him. Like, Israel Folau redefined it from him, and Christian Cullen just set the standard of what could be expected of a fullback in that time. Absolutely brilliant. As I mentioned before, my dad, we are South Africans, proudly South African. We are very biased. but he says Christian Cullen is by far his favorite player to ever watch the game. Just the way he could step, beat players, create something out of nothing. Once again, it's more on the older generation because we couldn't appreciate him for what he is in real life. We can appreciate a compilation, and there is a name on this list, very high, probably second in what I'm thinking, that we also just had to appreciate in terms of compilations, but you had to put him in. Christian Cullen was scintillating, and you'll hear everyone talk about him being one of the best to ever play the game. And that's fair enough. He deserves to be up there. We have to put respect on the people's name that is a bit older than us. We have to understand that point of view. So yeah, well done to Christian Cullen for getting into the top 10.
Yeah. So this is when the points start to do a bit of a jump each time. In 7th place, and I think he definitely should be in the top 10. I don't care where he finishes, as long as it's not top 3. But he finished 7th, and Aaron Smith with 48 points. I think, look, Aaron Smith is the greatest 9 to ever play the game, and that's just coming from a Safa. I think he was the longevity, the amount of scrum halves he kept out of the team, because that, and good scrum halves for that matter, because he was so good. His passing accuracy was probably the best you'll ever find. Look, Aaron Smith was just always finding himself in the right positions. He knew which line to take to get the offload. It's just a super phenomenal player, and I'm glad to see him finish his 7th on this list.
Yeah, my opinion, it should be up higher. I put him up higher just because we talk longevity, right? And we didn't put in Alan Wynne-Jones in the top 10 when it came to the forwards because we said you can't just think about longevity, right? But this is the difference between the two longevities. When Aaron Smith started playing, he was the best 9 in the world, okay? And then every time you think that, okay, Aaron Smith is almost done, this is the next big thing. Not in New Zealand, in the world. He had to go up against Will Guinea. You thought that's the next big thing. Blew him out of the water. And I appreciate Will Guinea a lot more than other people. I think Will Guinea was absolutely scintillating. Came up against him. Fourie du Preez, as we just mentioned, I think Aaron Smith was way better than Fourie du Preez. And Fourie du Preez is in my top 3 scrum halves to ever play the game. And I love Fourie du Preez. That's how highly I rate Aaron Smith. You think about Cam Roygard now, people thinking new young blood, maybe Aaron Smith should move out. Aaron Smith probably at his best season, his last season before he retired. Like Cam Roygard scoring all the tries, and still I wouldn't not put him above Aaron Smith. That's how good Aaron Smith was there. I think the guy was absolutely brilliant. He should be top 5 for me just because of longevity, accomplishments that he's done, and you could see a total shift in the way that New Zealand played with him or without him. Like obviously they had TJ Perenara as a backup player, and most TJ Perenara would have started for any other country in the world. It's the same with the Bowden Barrett and Richie Mo'unga thing, and yet he didn't even come close to really starting because of how good Aaron Smith was.
Yeah. Look,
and Aaron Smith had leadership as well. That's.
Yeah. I mean, when we went into the first game of the World Cup, France versus the All Blacks, you know, everyone was thinking, Dupont's going to show Aaron Smith something.
Yeah.
While France won the game, Aaron Smith blew Antoine Dupont out of the water.
Totally schooled him.
I thought Smith was way better than Dupont on the day, and he showed, like, listen, man, you are still new on the block. You've made a name for yourself, but I'm Aaron Smith. Like, I am the best 9.
Yeah.
And you work to get that honor. And look, I mean, I appreciate Aaron Smith. I think I had him 6th or 5th on my list. And look, a fantastic player. I mean, I'm glad to see him up there. But moving on, 6th place. I mean, I think we're getting to the 6 now that you have to mention. It just, you don't know the order. Only I know the order. You don't. But in 6th place, only 2 points above Aaron Smith, to be fair, Ma'a Nonu with 50 points.
I didn't expect it to be Ma'a Nonu.
Oh, okay. Well, look, I think these 6 had to be mentioned because Ma'a Nonu, yes, he looked like your bulldozing 12, but he could do more than that. He could play a good pass. He could kick, he could chip, he could grubber, he could tackle, he could do whatever you asked him to do, and just so good. I mean, I had him. I can't remember exactly on my list, but I had him mid-table as well, maybe a little bit lower. But Ma Nonu, I mean, fantastic player.
Yeah. What I meant is I didn't expect Ma Nonu. I thought he was going to be up even higher.
Oh,
I thought,
really? Okay.
yeah. But absolutely brilliant player. The best 12 to ever play the game. I know I wouldn't say a howler. I just kind of had a shot in the dark and threw in Damien Delenda there as well in my top 10. Not above Ma Nonu, by the way. Ma Nonu is the best 12 to ever play the game, but absolutely brilliant. Like everything he just brought to the game. We spoke about Tana Umaga, how good he was, and Ma Nonu just like kind of took over from him. They played together for a little while and then took over. That was the best centre pairing in the world. And then for years and years and years after that, the best centre pairing in the world was Ma Nonu and Conrad Smith. So automatically that alone gets him in there. Then you have to bring in the accomplishments that they got, literally dominating world rugby. He was absolutely scintillating. And as we can hear, it's literally New Zealand dominating because we know New Zealand dominated rugby for so long and they dominated it with their backline. So
yeah, I mean that 2011 to 2015 All Black squad was Ma Nonu's like prime, and I mean it was every All Black player's prime during that time. And when they used to come
in 2007 as well, right?
I can't guarantee that, but I'm sure he was around. But I think Ma Nonu was just whenever I was a kid. I mean at that time I was still early high school, late primary school, and obviously I still remember rugby for what it was then. And when we used to travel to New Zealand and you'd see the likes of Aaron Smith, Dan Carter, Ma Nonu, Conrad Smith, you just thought like, how are you supposed to play this? Like, how are you actually supposed to get a result?
Yeah.
Here? So yeah, fair play. Moving into the top 5, and this is where I'm like, okay, a bit interesting. I genuinely thought this player was going to be higher, but he wasn't. With 70, this is where the jump really gets there. 75 points. Johnny Wilkinson only finished 5th. And I can just see Brett's face because Brett had him at 1. Brett will think he should be a lot higher. But I just think that Johnny Wilkinson 5th is fair. I think it's fair. And obviously, clutch player, won the World Cup for England. And he was a great player. But I just think that they were better than him. In that, if you get what I'm saying, I think 5th is a fair reflection for Johnny Wilkinson. I don't know what your opinion on Johnny is, but
yeah, I mean, like I had him at 9, right? And I think I think he's one of the best 10s. I think he's the 3rd best 10 to ever play the game after Dan Carter and after Beauden Barrett. Yeah, obviously he's the golden boy of England. He was great in the fence, but I just think there's names that were better players than him overall. Like, it's not disrespectful for him to be in 5th. I think he should be a touch lower just because of the other names that we already mentioned. I think Aaron Smith deserves to be up higher. I think Beauden Barrett deserves to be up higher. Obviously, people will disagree with Beauden Barrett because it's still recent. People think Beauden Barrett is this baby. He's been playing for years, people, and he's accomplished way more than Johnny Sexton has accomplished. So, yeah, not disrespectful towards him. Obviously, he has got some nostalgia moments of the drop goal that he kicked, won the World Cup with his weak foot and stuff. So deserves to be in the top 10. I can't think, like, it's tough to accept him in the 5 if you think it's the 3rd best 10. How can he be the 5th best backline player of all time?
I think there's just a bias kind of a thought towards fly-offs because they are like the general of the backline. And they make a lot of the things happen within the backline. So I think a lot of people regard fly-offs as like the main guys, when in reality, you know, everyone, obviously the fly-off is the main guy. He gets the backline going. But obviously there needs to be different positions that need to be appreciated. And I mean, look, I had Johnny at 5, so he finished where I put him, and yeah, I mean, look, fair play to him. Obviously, clutch moment when he won the World Cup. So, but this is where I'm happy that it's happened, but I didn't expect it to happen. Is Brian O'Driscoll finished in 4th with 85 points. So
I
10
was
points.
wondering. I was wondering that third and fourth is almost more interesting than first and second because we kind of know who's first and second.
Yeah. So look, I mean, Brian O'Driscoll finished above Johnny Sexton. I mean, sorry, Johnny Wilkinson. And a lot of people will be unhappy with that because they'll say, listen, Johnny Wilkinson won a World Cup. He might have been a bit more clutch. But I just think Brian O'Driscoll was a better player. Like, that's all I can really say is O'Driscoll was a great player. I mean, one of the best centers to ever play, in my opinion. And 4th place, I think, is fair. Anything to add from your side?
Just quickly, I think it comes down to one fact purely. Johnny Wilkinson, when he played in his prime, wasn't the best 10 in the world. Dan Carter was the best 10 in the world. Brian O'Driscoll was the best outside center in the world at the time he played. And that kind of just edges it to him.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's different positions, but you can't have a guy second best in his position above a guy that's best in his position. Because Brian O'Driscoll, people talk about, we mentioned this a couple of times, revolutionizing a position. Brian O'Driscoll, I wouldn't say an average Irish team, but below par.
Not the best side.
Yeah, not as respected as they are now. Like, they are world beaters now. They are champions now. The time that Brian O'Driscoll played, they weren't, and he made them into a much better team. Without them, they don't come close to what they were in terms of how good they were back in those days. He was absolutely scintillating.
Yeah. So we get into the top 3 now, and in 3rd place, it's a guy that I genuinely thought people underrated. I thought that people didn't appreciate him enough. But I'm glad to see that he got the flowers he deserves, because a lot of people he goes under the radar for a lot of people. And I'm glad to see that the 20 people we asked, he was mentioned quite a lot to get him 102 points. Brian Abana, I mean,
yeah,
that's great. I think Brian Abana was, I mean, obviously we'll get into the top 2 now and we know who they are. But Brian Abana was actually just so good. I don't think people understand how good Brian Abana actually was. Like, I've always said this, like, he's so underrated, but like now I've said, like, okay, it's better that a lot of people have rated him higher. And obviously, as a Bulls fan, obviously nostalgia when he played for the Bulls and obviously the Springboks. Obviously heartbroken when he moved to the Stormers, but obviously we got one over him in the Super Rugby final, which I'm okay with. But look, still one of my heroes. I love Brian Abana as a kid. He was my favorite player as a kid back when I didn't know whether I wanted to be a forward or a backline player. Obviously now I love the forwards because that's what I am. But Brian Abana, obviously one of my heroes, and I'm just so glad to see him in 3rd place.
So Brevin, you might be wondering, casual, why are you wearing pink? And this is for Brian Abana, because my girl got me a Valentine's gift, and that was Brian Abana sending me a message, which was crazy. So this is in honor of Brian Abana. Absolutely brilliant. I agree with you. Like most people, if you think back about Brian Abana, a lot of people would say it was just like a pace merchant, right? He didn't have the step or anything else. Then you watch some of the tries he scored, interception king, how he read the game. Some of them, remember that tackle that he made in the 2007 final, against the English winger. Absolutely brilliant, just ahead of his time. Now, obviously, there will be a discussion, and most of these players, there's the discussion for if they played in this era, would they still be as good as they were back in that time? Because then he wouldn't be able to play the game that he played then in today's game, but then he would have found a way to adapt probably. But he deserves to be there. World Cup winner. Did it years and years and years. He's not a South African icon. He's an international icon in terms of rugby. He's a rugby icon everywhere he goes. And and I'm glad he got his flowers for this one. He was absolutely brilliant. He was all of us growing up. He was our favorite player. To see the pace that he had, the chip and chase. He's got the second best chip and chase in the world. The first best was Ricky January. But then overall, Brian O'Banner, chip and chase, the tackle, the pace, the interception, everything. It was just like, and obviously played with the long sleeve and the second skin on his pants and stuff. He just oozed confidence. What a player. We have to put him in there. Brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, just like the way he would slip tackles and find little gaps, and then he still had more to do, and he would do like a chip, and then his like little football grubbers. I mean, I loved him. So I mean, fair play to him. Still one of my heroes. In second place, a massive jump in points. These two literally stormed it. Second place, Jonah Lomu, 132 points. I mean, look, this is where, and this is no disrespect to Jonah Lomu. Not one bit of disrespect. I think he revolutionized the wing position. I think he was the start where wings needed to start having pace, but at the same time, they needed to have a bit of power as well. And look, I had Jonah Lomu in 9th place on my list, or 10th. No, it was 9th or 10th. I don't want to go scrolling and look. And the only reason I say this is I just believe that in today's day and age, if we look at a Julian Surveyor, he kind of did the same thing that a Jonah Lomu did. But Julian Surveyor won a World Cup. Jonah Lomu never won a World Cup. And Julian Surveyor won against the Springboks, and Jonah Lomu didn't. And look, I respect the guy. Obviously, a legend in the game. He's an icon in rugby, not just New Zealand, and there's massive respect to him. I just think that there's a lot of wings in today's game that are doing the same thing that he did back then. And yes, he did it first, and that's why he should be in the top 10 no matter what. But I just think there were better players. And you can say, oh, but if you put him in this generation, he would have had the conditioning and stuff. And that's fair. But we never got to see him in this generation, of course. And that's the only reason I didn't put him higher. So, I mean, that's just my opinion. And like I said, it's no disrespect. I love the guy. But
yeah, I respect your opinion for going with that. And yeah, it's good reasoning. I'm going to sound like a total hypocrite. I put him in at 2, I think. I put him in second, right? And I'm kind of throwing out the reason that I didn't put in Joos van der Westhuizen and Christian Cullen. I said I'm not going to be nostalgia merchants. Like, I didn't really see them play, and yet Jonah Lomu played in the same era as them. But it's just because, like, certain players, or one player in specific, Jonah Lomu, when you talk about revolutionizing not the position, the game, being an international icon, just bulldozing over people, stepping people, outgassing people, literally just being a phenomenon in everything he did. You have to put respect on his name. And when everyone in your family, in your country, and everything, and your own nation fully agrees that he's the best winger to ever do it, and you see a billion compilations of him still running around today, like Christian Cullen, respectful, brilliant player, but I have to go and search a compilation. Jonah Lomu's videos still pop up on my scrolls and stuff today. That's how much impact on the game he had overall. And when someone has an impact like that was made about almost 30 years ago, and it still renders through to today, you have to put respect on them. And I was like, okay, fine. I haven't necessarily watched these games, but I've seen so much of him in terms of clips and stuff that I am fine and happy to be hypocritical and put him into that number 2 spot, because that is just how good he was and how high up he is in everyone else's lists as well. And I have to respect that. So I just said, okay, number 2, fair spot, because number 1 is easy. Tell us who it is.
Yeah, I mean, look, Dan Carter. And can I just say, out of the 200 points he could have got, he got 182 points out of 200.
Do you have the list in front of you? Which list was he the lowest on?
there was someone that did not have Dan Carter in at.
That is ridiculous.
There's I think 2 lists that didn't have Dan Carter in, and like you said, that's ridiculous. That is.
Yeah, we're not asking them to put in
I mean,
lists again.
really? I mean, it's ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, look, Dan Carter. I know I just revved up Bowden Barrett, but Dan Carter. I mean, you knew you were probably going to win the game when he started for you. I mean,
yeah,
so much confidence in the guy. I mean, if the All Blacks were ever in a situation where it was like, oh, could we lose this game? Dan Carter was like, don't you worry, guys, I've got this. And he would control the game and put them back where they needed to be. And Dan Carter, obviously, the biggest name in rugby. And I'll admit it, he is. When you mention the name rugby, 9 times out of 10, they will say, oh, Dan Carter, yeah. Or the one time they'll say Jonah Loman, you know? So,
yeah.
Look, Dan Carter is the face of world rugby. I mean, literally, he's the one that carries a trophy out with a banner here and there. But look, Dan Carter was on another level. I think he was literally, him and Bowden Barrett were just, like I said on the other video, you get rivalries with S tier, A tier. I think if you're saying S tier fly halves, it's Bowden Barrett and Dan Carter. And like many will say, there has to be another tier for Dan Carter because he was just that good. So
Yeah.
always going to be number 1.
The thing is, right, he started as a 12, brilliant at 12, shifted into number 10 position, and then just took over. And no one came close to, no one even had the potential that Dan Carter was already at and exceeding. That is how good he was. Because if this is, I think this is a fair example, right? If we think about what made Johnny Wilkinson good, we think about his kicking, right? Left foot, right foot. Doesn't matter. He could have kicked with both feet. If you think of other players, they all have that. Abana with the speed, Lamu with the power that he possessed. Bowden Barrett, how he reads the game, whether he has to pass, chip over the top, or hit the gap, and he backs himself, right? Dan Carter had all of it. He had every single inch of what makes a player the best, and he had it. He was the best at everything. He was the best kicker, best at reading the game. His defense was good. Obviously, he got bumped by Bismarck du Plessis, like the infamous bump, right? Or the smash, whatever. But Dan Carter, like, put him in the driest of conditions at the Griquas Stadium, in the Vrystaat or whatever, right? Or put him in the wettest conditions in Scotland or England, and he would still run the game because he was so adaptable. If you think, like a lot of people think about Dan Carter, just how good he kicked, and then you watch a compilation of some of the tries he scored and the meters he made. You talk about Sonny Bill Williams having the best offloads. Have you seen some of the offloads and the passes that Dan Carter created? Something out of nothing. And obviously you have the beautiful storyline of Dan Carter, right? So 2007, he was the best fly off from 2007 until 2015 when he won the World Cup, right? And that is an 8-year, the best, not the best 10, the best player in my opinion, right? He was absolutely insane. And this beautiful storyline of no, sorry, not 2015, 2011, because 2015 was Bowden Barrett, right? This beautiful storyline of being the best 10 in the world, but not having your World Cup behind your name, going into the World Cup in France in 2007, and then getting injured, right? And then he couldn't play the game, and they fell out. Then and that came in a kicking practice, right? I don't know if you've heard the story. And then going into the 2011 one, getting another injury scare, and then saying, "Listen, but this is my year. Finally, this is my year." And then just took it by the scruff of the neck and won the World Cup as well. That kind of started the era of New Zealand dominance of the best team to ever play the game. That 4-year patch of 2011 to 2015. And it's largely because of what Dan Carter did. Like, if you thought about that team, it's Dan Carter, Julian Savia, Ma Nonu. Those are the guys you mentioned in that time. Absolutely brilliant. Not revolutionizing a position, revolutionizing a game, the sport as a whole. And I think he's one of those names that will be remembered forever.
Yeah. Well, look, ladies and gentlemen, we have literally been with you for, if you've stayed this long, we genuinely are so grateful. I mean, we've nearly been going for an hour. So thank you so much. And if you have got this far, please don't forget to like and subscribe. We're growing at a nice rate, and we really want to continue to grow like this so we can provide content to you guys. Check out the social medias like Spotify, where you can get the podcast as well. You don't have to go onto YouTube. You can listen to it with your phone closed or whatever. Obviously X and Instagram and TikTok. But yeah, I mean, obviously Mr. Burns couldn't join us today. And he does love you guys. It's just obviously I also play club rugby, and sometimes they have a game this weekend. I don't, and obviously the coaches wanted to keep him in a bit longer than usual. So it is what it is. But Casual Bias, it's been great. I mean, I dig this duo. I think we get a lot done well together. So maybe in the future we might meet again, just the two of us again.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously we want the three of us here all the time, and sometimes it can't happen. So we do apologize. But yeah, thank you guys so much. We appreciate you. And we will be back again on Monday. So we will check you then. Cheers.
You mean on Wednesday, because this is going out on Monday?
Yes. No,
this is going out on Friday. Whoa.
Yeah, you can do your job. We'll see you on Monday. We'll see you
Okay.
today. And